but it's this knowing that there's hope. There's people like yourselves that are being an amazing example in that realm. And marriage retreats, as you mentioned, I don't know if you're still doing those or not through Engaged Marriage, but I really want people to have access to the e-courses and things you're mentioning, because it really is the foundation of how you can be successful in business, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to, but we haven't done any in-person things since, COVID. But yeah, absolutely. The online resources are there. And something you said, I think maybe I would like to say this out loud so that it doesn't sound like everything is just like roses, right? So in middle of 2017, I was struggling huge because I was working 50, 60 hours a week at my engineering job, had Engaged Marriage going, desperately wanted to like do something different, but just didn't. I was stuck, and I felt super stuck at that point. And at some point, I call it an epiphany, but I felt like this piece that came down, and it was this idea that there really are no, with a few exceptions, there really are no permanent decisions. And that like hit me like with so much conviction that like, hey, I should be wise about this, but like if I make this transition into self-employment and entrepreneurship, and I really am not good at it, like I could just go back to engineering, like, and it
Yes.
was like, it took
Yes.
all this weight off my shoulders. But there's still this practical aspect of how do you actually make that dramatic of a change? Because this is the part I wanted to kind of say out loud. My wife was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years, and she was a stay-at-home mom at that time. So I was the only income, I was all the insurance. And so that's the idea of walking away from the six-figure engineering career to kind of take a bet on myself and be able to do entrepreneurship was a huge thing. And what got us through that was that second half of 2017 was like super intentional communication with my wife and my kids. Like, hey, I know I work a lot. I'm gonna be working like way more for the next 6 months
All
because
right. You
I'm
might see me
testing
more,
things.
but yeah.
Yeah, and by the end of this year, I'm gonna know, am I making this leap or not? So then when I did, we had kind of a war chest established. We had paid off all our debts and all that previously, so it made it feasible. And my wife, you're saying that you guys are both entrepreneurs. My wife's like the anti-entrepreneur in the sense that she loves security. She loves like
Yes.
the whole 9 to 5. Like she thought I was crazy, but to her credit, she trusted me and said, "Hey, I know you feel this calling and you feel like convicted to do it. I'm so here to support you. Realize that like anything you can do to make it less scary for me is good." Um,
Right.
and so we kind of had that really clear path and open communication. And we were, in hindsight, it was a success story. But yeah, for anyone listening, it's like, man, I do want to make some big change. I'm a huge fan of taking a leap of faith, but in a really smart way, and planning, getting coaching around it, being part of a community to support you in these major changes, such as I went through almost 5 years ago now. So.
Yeah, that's such sound sage advice, y'all, because when I speak to my story and my being able to quit two positions in order to put that as the priority, that's not everybody's storyline. Now, mind you, I thought my husband was providing at the time, and we were going into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt because I couldn't even process any extra ailing point. And so he was doing it out of protection to support us and to put marital health and all of those things as the priority, my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health, all those things. He literally laid his life down. But in the midst of that, I was financially not sound on what was transpiring. And so it took us this crawl of getting out once that became aware to me. And at the same time, people were from the outside were looking in. We're like, oh, they've got it so easy. Like she doesn't even have to work. She's a stay-at-home mom, right? And meanwhile, I'm like postpartum deficit, right? And I want people as they hear our stories to not necessarily think, oh, I'm going to just jump in that direction. There's so many details. There's so many backstories. There's so many generational bondage and generational pushes, both good and bad, that were transpiring. And so everybody's journey is different. But I think ultimately, if we can come back to what you said in the foundation of this conversation is the element of relationships. And for Dustin and I both, it's our relationship with God before it is even our relationship with our marriage partner, that then is the relationship of our business partners. Because when that's out of alignment, that is what breaks. And when that breaks, everything breaks. And so I'm excited that I have a new friend, a new partner that I can reach out to and say, what are you doing? How's it working? But I want everybody else to have those same resources. And so which business meets you? Do you want some Fire Creek sticks? You need some meat for your kids' lunch boxes or for your own? Do you need some business coaching, some simple solutions specifically around that partnership marketing that he's speaking to? Or do you need some help in your love life and just need some support in that arena? Any of the above, it's founded on the rock, which is why we show up on Fit and Faith every single day. Dustin, do you have any like final comments or thoughts before we say goodbye for the day?
No, I mean, I think this was my final thought, I guess, is just I absolutely love what you're doing. I love your energy and the spirit around making sure that people see business in a positive light and that it is a fruit and it is something positive and it is something that you can be called to. And it's not in any way selfish to listen to these calls. And if you're not sure where you're being called or kind of where your purpose is, like what you just said is it. Start with the relationship with God first, those quiet moments, a little bit of prayer in the morning, some gratitude, and it will start to unlock and really help get you into the flow of the business, side of this equation. So no, I just want to kind of hold you up, Tamara, and say thank you for all that you're doing.
Oh, thanks so much. And you're right. And if people could just open their eyes to that piece that you're talking about, like God is so active in speaking to us every single day on the direction in which we're supposed to go. I think the number one thing that people come to me for from a business development perspective is clarity. Like they
Yeah.
have this prompting, but they just literally feel like they're in a clouded room and they don't know where they're supposed to go, how they're supposed to get there. But they've had this vision that's been gifted to them. And I think if people stopped focusing so much on how and they just simmered and sat and remained as we're supposed to remain in the vine with the why, like the how comes to fruition. There's the people that you run into, there's the meat shops you walk into, like there's so much right in front of us when our eyes and our hearts are open and our hands. I think that postured open hand is just as important. And that open hand is reciprocal. So if you're on the other end of this podcast right now and you need help, we want to help you. But if you can also offer help in any of the arenas we spoke to, we want to hear from you too. If you have more wisdom on how we can grow our businesses, I don't think I've ever said this on our podcast ever, but if you're out there listening and you're like, Tamara should do this better, Tamara could do this thing, or Dustin could really use my subscription box. Let's
Right.
let's connect and create partnerships after this show. We appreciate you, Dustin, for being here. Thank you to your wife as well for sticking at your side as you have gone down this entrepreneurial path. And I'm just prayerful for continued blessings for you and your family as you continue this thing out. I'm excited to see what more businesses you develop.
Well, I appreciate that, Tamara. And I know we talked about a lot. I mean, the easy thing to remember for people, simplesuccesscoaching.com. That's got links to all the other stuff I do. But that's, get in contact. I'm very much a relational person. So if you had something that came up that you thought was interesting, or you have a question, or like you said, if you have a suggestion for me, I'm all ears. And just hop on there, shoot me an email. I'm very much an open book, and I would love to connect with your audience in any way that's helpful to them.